rises in winter, frozen for 30 million years, not even rain for 2 million years, but 80% of the world's fresh water is stored here. Antarctica, the most remote and mysterious continent on the planet. In the past century, humanity has thoroughly studied its surface, but the most interesting thing is hidden deep beneath the ice. What was discovered there utterly amazed everyone.
So, what lies deep beneath the massive ice sheets of Antarctica?
Antarctica is the land at 90 degrees south latitude on Earth, where the average temperature is minus 25 degrees Celsius in summer and minus 65 degrees Celsius in winter. Antarctica has a desert climate. On this continent, there is almost never precipitation, meaning the phenomenon of water returning to Earth from the air.
The relative humidity in the air is almost 0%.
In winter, for 6 consecutive months, Antarctica will have no sunlight. Conversely, in summer, there will be 6 consecutive months of daylight here.
The average thickness of the Antarctic ice sheet is about 2.7 kilometers. It is believed that the geological foundation of Antarctica has been quite stable for the past several tens of millions of years.
And perhaps from its formation until now.
Except for penguins and modern humans with the support of machinery and technology.
No subtropical plants or animals could survive here. But that's not entirely true. In 1912, explorer Robert van Conscoot, upon returning from the Antarctic exploration race, discovered clusters of fossilized trees in the Beardmore Glacier at 82 degrees south latitude.
Perhaps these fossilized tree specimens made Conscoot and his teammates' luggage heavier, causing his team to become exhausted and die on the way back.
However, his fossil discoveries opened a completely new window into Antarctica's subtropical past. Professor Jane Francis of the University of Leeds, UK, is a courageous explorer who followed in Conscoot's footsteps.
She spent 10 field seasons in Antarctica collecting fossilized trees,
and received the Polar Medal from the Queen of England in 2002. Going back 100 million years, Antarctica was covered in lush tropical forests, similar to areas existing in New Zealand today. Researchers often find entire fossilized tree trunks from truly large trees. This is a specimen of a cross-section of a fossilized log from Antarctica with tree rings discovered by Professor Francis's team. The tree rings indicate that tall ancient trees existed here. Scientists cannot imagine how plants in Antarctica coped with being in darkness for 6 months. And 6 continuous months under sunlight to survive here before being fossilized. But not only plants, explorers also discovered that there are fossilized dinosaurs in Antarctica. This is truly strange. Professor Thomas Grigg of the Victoria Museum, Australia, is a world-renowned dinosaur hunter, always searching for dinosaur traces in polar regions. Over the past 20 years, he has meticulously excavated fossil sites in southern Australia. This area was located off the coast of East Antarctica 100 million years ago. His discovery raises an interesting question. Did Antarctic dinosaurs migrate during winter, or did they adapt to living in the dark forests of the polar night? Professor Grigg thinks he knows the answer. The only complete dinosaur skeleton we found is Liuli nasora. What is truly unusual about that specimen is the skull. It indicates that the animal had enlarged eye sockets. This suggests that polar dinosaurs might have possessed superior night vision, well suited to the prolonged darkness of winter. In April 2016, Queensland scientists discovered fossils of 4 dinosaurs on James Ross Island in Antarctica. Researcher James Salisbury, one of 13 experts participating in this expedition, said, "We found many truly amazing fossils. The fossil blocks we are studying are from the end of the dinosaur era. So, most of them are between 71 million and 67 million years old."
Since this area was a shallow marine region, scientists also found very rich fossils of marine organisms including clams,
ammonites and cephalopods, a type of mollusk with head-footed animals. Salisbury's team also found many skeletons of large marine reptiles. In 2018, Gould Branson, a professor at the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, also announced the discovery of numerous plant fossils. Animals, including amphibians and reptiles on the Antarctic Peninsula. These discoveries show that Antarctica was once a subtropical region with ancient forests and coastlines full of diverse animals.
From large ones like dinosaurs to small ones like animals.
The question raised is, why was Antarctica once a subtropical land and why did it become icy as it is today? Alfred Lothar Wigner was a German multidisciplinary scientific researcher. In 1912, Alfred Wigner observed that the shapes of continents on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean could be fitted together, for example Africa and South America. In addition, the similarity between geographical structures and fossils on continents led Alfred Lothar Wigner in the early 20th century to propose the theory of continental drift. He believed that Earth was initially composed of a single supercontinent called Pangaea, which later split into smaller continents Laurasia and Gondwana, eventually separating into today's world continents. Today, Alfred Lothar Wigner's continental drift theory has become part of a larger geological theory, which is plate tectonics.
Plate tectonics theory states that Earth's outer layers are divided into the lithosphere and the outer layer, and the inner layer is the asthenosphere. This division is based on differences in mechanical characteristics and heat transfer methods within them.
Mechanically, the lithosphere is colder and harder, while the asthenosphere is hotter and more fluid. Due to the effect of some force, the lithosphere broke and moved over the asthenosphere, creating the separation of continental blocks. Research indicates that at the end of the Cretaceous period, over 65 million years ago, when dinosaurs still dominated the land,
a giant meteorite tens of kilometers in diameter crashed into Earth and caused a global catastrophe, destroying over 70% of Earth's organisms.
All land dinosaurs gradually perished due to sudden environmental changes and the destruction of the food chain. Researchers believe that the meteorite impact over 65 million years ago strongly affected Earth's crust,
causing geological fractures, earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic activity.
The impact of the collision caused some land areas to sink to the ocean floor and some areas that were originally submerged to be pushed up above ground. Simultaneously,
the terrible impact of the collision also caused Earth's crust lithosphere to break, separating large continents into smaller ones.
South Pole and forming today. When drifting to Antarctica, which receives very little sunlight, this entire continental block suddenly became extremely cold and froze with kilometers thick ice, preserving traces of all plants and animals here.
Therefore, today people find fossil samples of trees, animals, and dinosaurs in Antarctica.
Professor Eric Gould Branson and John Isbell from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee crossed the Transantarctic Mountains during Antarctica's summer. From November to January, they found 280 million-year-old tree fossils in Antarctica. These are considered evidence of the oldest forest in Antarctica. These trees are believed to have lived through periods of extreme climate, with complete darkness and continuous sunlight.
Previously, they had found fossil fragments of 13 trees they estimated to be over 260 million years old.
This means the forest grew before the first dinosaurs appeared at the end of the Permian period. Professor Gould Branson said people have known about fossils in Antarctica since around 1910. But most of this region remains unexplored. This forest grew at latitudes where trees today cannot grow, so he believes they must have been an extremely hardy species. The research team is now trying to understand why they went extinct. Professor Gould Branson shared, unlike anything today, these trees could switch their growth cycles like turning a light switch on and off. We know trees can hibernate immediately in winter, but we don't know how they operated throughout summer. These trees are thought to have survived by living nearly half a year in complete darkness, followed by 5 months of continuous light. During the Permian period, Antarctica was much warmer than today. At that time, Antarctica was still part of Gondwana. Geologists believe the forest was covered by mosses and ferns and stretched across the entire Gondwana. These trees could transition from summer activity to winter hibernation quickly, perhaps within just a few months. Dating the fossils is one of the team's biggest challenges.
Recent findings suggest this forest is about 280 million years old, with an error margin of approximately plus or minus 20 million years.
New research aims to study how these polar ecosystems changed during the mass extinction event at the end of the Permian period 250 million years ago. Although research on the causes of the mass extinction event is still ongoing, many scientists believe 90% of species were wiped out from Earth, including this Antarctic forest. Professor Gould Branson said the forest will provide a glimpse of life before the mass extinction, possibly helping us understand the causes of this event, and it could also provide clues about differences between plants today and in the past. The professor also believes his work could help understand the impacts of contemporary climate change, and suggests that today's global warming could lead to forests moving toward the North Pole in places like Siberian Arctic and Canadian Arctic. Today covered by pure white snow and sparkling ice, Antarctica is a symbol of purity and nature's pristine beauty.
The landscape is incredibly majestic, with massive ice blocks rising high, resembling towering ice castles before one's eyes. Although survival conditions are harsh, Antarctica still has diverse biological life, with some seabirds, marine animals, and other animals living here. Not only is it a pristine and uniquely cold tropical region, Antarctica also plays a crucial role in atmospheric research and the planet's climate change. The impact of research in Antarctica has provided humanity with deeper insights into climate change phenomena and the importance of environmental protection. As a great natural wonder, Antarctica is an attractive and challenging destination for those wanting to explore the miraculous beauty and undisclosed mysteries of the geographical pole. Dangerous ancient viruses have lain dormant beneath the permafrost for millions of years, some of which are extremely hazardous. However, with the Earth warming today, the permafrost is melting, creating an opportunity for them to reawaken, bringing the risk of numerous infectious diseases and threatening our safety. Scientists warn that the risk of disease threat from the distant past cannot be underestimated.
Scientific waste and radiation from wartime have the potential to harm marine animals and disrupt ecosystems, and could also be released as the frozen ground thaws.
Kimberly Meyer, a climate scientist working for NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, emphasizes,
"There are many concerning things in the permafrost, showing why preserving as much permafrost as possible is extremely important." In geology, permafrost or permanently frozen ground is a layer of soil at or below the freezing point of water at 0 degrees Celsius for 2 years or more.
Most permafrost layers are located at high latitudes, but can also occur on mountains at much lower latitudes.
Permafrost covers part of the southern hemisphere, existing in the Arctic tundra and boreal forests of Alaska, Canada, and Russia for millennia.
This type of soil acts as a time capsule, preserving ancient viruses and mummified remains of some extinct animals that scientists have excavated and studied in recent years,
including 2 young cave lions and a woolly rhinoceros.
The reason permafrost is a good storage medium is that it is not only cold but also an oxygen-free environment where light cannot penetrate.
But today, Arctic temperatures are warming 4 times faster than the rest of the planet, weakening the top layer of permafrost in the region. To better understand the risk from frozen viruses, Jean-Michel Claverie, an emeritus professor at the Aix-Marseille University School of Medicine in Marseille, France, examined samples from Siberian permafrost to see if the viruses within could infect. Claverie discovered several viruses that could be revived, which he calls zombie viruses. Claverie studies a particular type of virus he first identified in 2003, known as giant viruses, which are much larger than common strains and can be seen clearly under a standard optical microscope without needing a more powerful electron microscope. Claverie was inspired to discover frozen viruses in permafrost by a group of Russian scientists who revived a wildflower from 30,000-year-old seed tissue found in a squirrel burrow in 2012. In 2014, Claverie revived a virus that he and his team isolated from permafrost, allowing it to infect for the first time in 30,000 years by introducing it into cultured cells.
For safety reasons, he chose to study viruses that target only single-celled amoebas, not animals or humans. Claverie repeated the experiment in 2015, isolating another virus that also targets amoebas.
In the latest study published on February 18 in the journal Viruses, Claverie and colleagues collected several ancient viruses from various permafrost samples taken at different sites in Siberia, Russia. The zombie viruses were revived by scientists in the laboratory. More horrifyingly, they began infecting nearby amoebas. The potential for these zombie viruses to infect mammals, including humans, remains unclear. But researchers warn that this shows dormant viruses under the world's permafrost are a real threat to humanity. According to CNN, Claverie found these zombie virus strains frozen for 48,500 years in the soil of an underground lake covered by permafrost in the Russian Siberian cold desert. Along with some younger samples dating back 27,000 years from various sources, including the carcass of a woolly mammoth.
Professor Claverie and his colleagues brought these zombies to the laboratory and attempted to revive them. Just like in a horror movie, these tiny ghosts not only came back alive but quickly functioned as if they had never spent tens of thousands of years.
Amoebas,
tiny single-celled organisms cultured in a lab, were exposed to the viruses and quickly infected by the ancient ghosts. Professor Claverie issued warnings, stating, "We view these amoeba-infecting viruses as representatives of all other viruses that could exist in the permafrost. We see traces of many types that
that's no reason why other types wouldn't." The study adds to the alarming chorus that scientists worldwide have raised in recent years about the threat of ancient viruses and bacteria reviving as human-induced global warming melts permafrost everywhere. The warning became reality in 2016 when anthrax-causing bacteria unexpectedly appeared in Siberia, infecting dozens of people and over 2,000 reindeer.
It was suspected by the scientific community to be linked to the melting of permafrost during an unusually hot summer, allowing spores of the ancient bacterium Bacillus anthracis to revive after 2 million years from old graves or animal carcasses.
Previously, lung samples taken from a woman's body exhumed in 1997 from permafrost in a village on the Seward Peninsula of Alaska contained genetic material from the strain responsible for the 1918 pandemic.
In 2012, scientists confirmed that a 300-year-old mummy of a woman buried in Siberia contained genetic traces of the smallpox virus.
Birgitta Evengard, an emeritus professor in the Department of Clinical Microbiology in Sweden, said the risks from latent disease strains in thawing permafrost need to be more thoroughly investigated. SA virus hidden in permafrost that we haven. In reality, the scientific community doesn't know how long viruses can remain infectious after exposure to current conditions, or how likely they are to encounter a suitable host. Not all viruses cause disease. Some strains are quite benign or even beneficial to the host. With only 3.6 million people in the Arctic, it remains a sparsely populated area, making the risk of human exposure to ancient viruses. Nevertheless, the risk will increase in the context of global warming, where permafrost is thawing faster and more people are living in the Arctic.
Claverie is not the only researcher warning that the Arctic is a fertile ground for virus spread. Last year, a team of scientists published a study on soil and sediment samples taken from Lake Hazen, a freshwater lake located within the Arctic Circle. They sequenced genetic material in the sediments to find traces of viruses in the genomes of potential hosts, including local flora and fauna. Using computer model analysis, the research team indicated that the risk of viruses spreading to new hosts is higher at locations near where glacial meltwater flows into the lake. Identifying viruses and other threats in permafrost is the first step toward understanding the risk they pose to the Arctic. Other challenges include determining the location, timing, speed, and depth of permafrost thaw. Thawing is a slow process at a rate of only a few centimeters per decade, but it can also occur more rapidly. This process also releases methane and carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, contributing to climate change. According to Meyer, the re-emergence of ancient microorganisms could alter soil composition and climate, accelerating the impacts of climate change and helping to decode the mysterious giant sinkholes inside.
In 2020, a giant crater unexpectedly appeared in the Siberian tundra.
This was the 17th time such craters have appeared on the Yamal and Gita peninsulas in Russia's far north. Since the first crater was discovered in 2013, these sinkholes have been thought to be related to climate change. Recently, scientists for the first time used drones to fly deep into the crater, 10 to 15 meters down, to take photos, helping researchers build 3D models to decode them. There have now been 17 craters appear, and we still cannot know when the next one will form, or even explode. Although these craters appear in areas with very sparse population density, they still pose risks to indigenous people and oil and gas infrastructure.
The drones took about 80 photos, allowing researchers to build a 3D model of the crater.
30 meters deep, equivalent to the length of 3 buses lined up end to end. This model shows unusually shaped caves forming in the bottom, confirming most of the hypotheses that when methane accumulates in ice cavities, it causes a mountain to swell on the surface. The mountain grows larger before exploding, blowing away ice and debris, leaving behind a giant crater.
What remains unclear is the origin of the methane. It could come from deep underground layers or closer to the surface,
and could also be a combination of both. Permafrost is a natural reservoir of a greenhouse gas that can trap heat and warm the Earth much more strongly than CO2. The Arctic is warming twice as fast as the global average, weakening the permafrost, which acts as a lid, making it easier for methane to escape. Some experts estimate that permafrost soils contain twice as much carbon as the atmosphere,
making this region extremely important in the fight against climate change. Researchers also found that these craters are a worrying sign that our planet's northern polar region is undergoing fundamental changes.
According to the study, about 5% of the total 327,000 square kilometers that the team surveyed witnessed sudden lands
from 1984 to 2017.
These changes include ground subsidence, formation of new lakes, and disappearance of others,
along with erosion at river bends.
Sarin Natali, director of the Arctic program at the Woodwell Climate Research Center and co-author of the study, said, "These craters represent a transformation process that scientists had not previously known about. These craters and other sudden changes occurring across the Arctic are signs that the Arctic is warming and ice is melting rapidly.
This could have serious consequences for Arctic residents and globally."